Hi, today I'm going to review a book about climate change, and the reason I chose this book is for this channel is that climate change obviously is potentially going to cause us a lot of suffering, and if things continue the way they are going, there's not going to be a whole lot of happiness on Earth in a couple of decades. So the book that I chose is With Speed and Violence. The full title is With Speed and Violence, Why Scientists Fear Tipping Points in Climate Change by Fred Pearce. I'm going to start with my one complaint about the book, and that is that there is a glossary in the back with descriptions of some technical words, and they didn't say that they had a glossary in the back. So I read the whole thing and was often confused by some of these scientific terms, and I had no idea the glossary was there until I got to the very end of the book, and then I saw it. And I'll give you an example. In one chapter, he was talking about permafrost, and in my mind, permafrost is like, I don't know, maybe 10 feet of packed snow and ice that never melts. That's what I thought permafrost was. But when I got to the back and I saw it was in the glossary, it's actually permanently frozen soil and rock found in the tundra regions of Siberia, Canada, Antarctica, and some mountain regions. It can reach a depth of more than 1.2 miles. So obviously when I was reading about permafrost, I wasn't getting the full picture because I didn't really know what it was. So that's my one complaint about the book. Otherwise, I thought it was really good. He explained the work of dozens of scientists. Some were climatologists, some were geophysicists, archaeologists, and they're working all over the world, and they're doing different things like collecting ice core samples and looking at tree rings and the rings in coral growth, digging up the sediment in the bottom of lakes or at the bottom of the ocean. And he explains what each scientist was working on and the conclusion that they came to, and then how other scientists were working on other things and took the first scientists' information and, you know, wove it into what they were learning. And this is definitely a book that is written by somebody who believes in climate change. So if you don't believe in climate change, you probably wouldn't want to read this. But the takeaway that I had from this book is that the world is just gigantic, and there's so many people working on studying the Earth and the climate and the changes happening in the climate. And they're all kind of coming to the same conclusion, which is that the Earth is warming because of man's activities. And it's just, I thought this book was really good, even though it was written in, I think it was 2007. Yeah, 2007, and it's 2020 right now when I'm filming this. So the book is 13 years old, but it's still a valid book, and I think it's still worth reading, because you just get the sense of how big the problem is and how many different systems there are in, how many different weather systems there are, and, you know, what is driving what. There's still more questions that need to be answered. As much as we know about climate and weather and the changes happening, there's still so much that we don't know. And I think this book does a really good job of just kind of giving an overview of what scientists do know at this point. Now, again, it's 13 years later, so I would love to see an update on this book, something that is more accurate with today's numbers, because like the parts per million of carbon dioxide in the air in this book is not accurate anymore, of course. But he talks in the book about that, like that the parts per million isn't even that important. He wants to know the full amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in tons. So yeah, the parts per million isn't accurate anymore, but like I said, he the author doesn't even think that that's the important metric to look at. So overall, I would give this book a 4.5 out of 5. The half a star that's missing is because it gets a little bit scientific. It's a little bit hard to follow. He does do a good job of trying to explain the scientific terms, but even so, it's still a little bit confusing. There were times when I just had to say, I'm just going to take his word for it. I don't really understand what he's saying, but I'm going to trust that his conclusion is right. One other thing that I thought was really interesting about this book is that he talks about the different phases that the Earth has gone through. Like, there have been ice ages in the past, and then it's been a warming period, and then ice again. I didn't realize that the Earth had gone through so many cycles of being cool and then heating up again. They're really long cycles, like tens of thousands of years. But he does address in the book that even though the Earth has gone through cycles, what we're currently experiencing now is not a natural cycle that the Earth is going through. It's definitely because of man's activities. And I should mention the title of the book, With Speed and Violence, is what he means by that is that Mother Nature, the Earth, is not this fragile thing that needs to be protected. Rather, she is a fierce creature that when you reach a certain tipping point, there's a big reaction, and we don't know what all of those tipping points are, and we don't know the reaction that Mother Nature is going to have once we reach those tipping points. But he makes a good case that it's not going to be just like a gradual change. It's going to be a change with speed and violence. So if you're interested in climate change, I would definitely recommend reading this book. I think it's a worthwhile read even 13 years later. Thanks for watching. See you soon.